Hi everybody, Van here. Wanted to go over a review of the crypto market, specifically Bitcoin, right? Because clearly if Bitcoin dumps, the rest of the market pretty much follows. So what I'm going to be looking at is a few things here to determine kind of if this move downward has finished and we're ready to take off. I did want to wait on this video until we had a weekly close on the previous week, and also to kind of take a look at today and see where we had closed on today. Today for me being Monday, May 24th. So let's get into it and take a look at a few things and how we should potentially approach this market. So if we move to the monthly, we can see that so far, and let me get rid of this moving average here. That so far we've had this pretty bearish candle, right? Nice corrective candle here. And, you know, we have yet to close this candle, right? And so whether or not it moves up and this is a large wick or whatever, we've still got a solid week before we get a close on this candle. And a lot can happen in the next week. Taking a look at some of the other indicators here, on our RSI, I explain this in my streams quite often, but what I've done is I've built an indicator that actually overlays your Fibonacci retracement levels on the RSI. And just a quick view on how I look at this. Anything above in this green region here, I consider to be pretty bullish. Anything that moves around in that region, you tend to get a lot of really impulsive and strong moves upwards. And you can see that right here. And then anything in this red area down here is generally pretty bearish. And on the monthly, we've actually never entered that area. Okay, and so we've been pretty solid in our growth curve. You can see this here, month over month, over time. Okay, and so just taking a look at the monthly, I just wanted to address the fact that the previous month we actually had this kind of not really a doji, but this key reversal candle here. And we kind of anticipated that we were going to fall, and especially when we started the month up here and continued to retest this 5960,000 area, and we've moved down. Well, how far down do we go? Is the next month or the next 2 months going to be pushing us down even further? Well, let's take a look on the RSI here. We have pushed below this really overbought level into this green region. Now that said, if we do, close this month, in a similar area around here, the RSI doesn't dip below the 618 or maybe even just a little bit below. And then the next month we actually, for the month of June, start to pump up a little bit. We could put, what I see, and I can show it here often, is that when there's a break of the 618 level, okay, on the RSI, that generally tends to correspond with a break of some previous high. And you can see that here in this region right here. And I'll say this over and over again. You can see that over here. Let me get you over here. Right in this region right here, where it corresponds with the break of a previous high. This high here at the 618. This high here at the 618. Even down here, right around here, it corresponded with the break of this area of accumulation right there, right? And so as we continue to see this in different time frames, I'm going to continue to bring it up because it's the way that I take a look at these charts and how I will analyze it. So you're very likely to hear me say it again. So on the weekly, though, what we've seen is the past couple of weeks we've had these two bearish candles, and it seems that we found support this week. Now, this is a day old, potentially 2 days old, depending on when you're getting this and where you are in the world. But we have this area where we've had some accumulation right here. And so we're going to mark this as a pretty substantial area right here, clearly. And I'm actually going to lock it up here. And so we're going to need, to close this week above this. Really, I'd like to see a solid close above this 42, 43. And then continue and not see a lower low on the next week to really confirm that we potentially are out of the doldrums here. Now, we found support the past couple weeks here, but we could potentially go lower, I think. And even if we make a higher low on the weekly, we may, see this pull back here back to 30 yet still. So I'll cover that as we move forward. I'm looking at the RSI on this. What does look rather bullish on the weekly here is the fact that we have this from this point here, okay, to this point here so far, potentially this divergence filling out. And what we're looking at is if we're seeing some support here at this 48 to 52 range, we could see, again, a move back up. And as I said before, this break of the 618 would likely correspond with a break of this 60,000, 62, whatever you want to look at, these previous highs as we move up into here again. That's assuming, however, that we do find support where we're at and that we start to move up. However, on the weekly, I will be looking at that. Our DMI, or directional index, still indicates that we're seeing a bullish trend. Barely. I mean, these two are making little fish lips here. I don't know how else to say it, but where they haven't crossed yet. We have not seen a cross, and we would likely need to see this week close red and potentially lower for our directional index to actually cross. So, they're both sitting here at the 20, indicating that neither trend is very strong at the moment, and we have the ADX actually moving down and showing a decrease in the trend. So a little bit of indecision right here on the weekly so far at the beginning of the week. Not really sure where we're going looking at the weekly chart. Let's zoom in a little closer on the daily, and we can see that we're pretty oversold here on the daily. Our ADX is showing down here that we have clearly a bearish trend. Our RSI here is, making higher lows down here, and I can get into this here shortly, but in the same way that we see pretty substantial growth when price action moves in this green region up here, okay, or higher, right? It's growing. When we get movement in this red area down here, we see continued the price to continue to fall and move backward. Or move down, I should say. And so long as we continue, I believe, and this has been my observation, some move in here, right, in this region, or lower. Lower would actually be more dramatic, the moves down. Then there's a potential, and I think a good possibility, that we could continue to see lower prices here. And where that'll go, we'll kind of review that here in a little bit. But I just want to kind of give you an idea of why I'm approaching this and leaning my bias, I think, more toward the downside at the moment. This isn't, I'm not saying this because I want it to dump. I kind of do, just because I'd like to get some more cheaper. However, this isn't, I don't hate Bitcoin. I'm impartial, I guess, at the end of the day as to which way it moves. Short term on the daily. Long term, I feel that we're going to see some growth still. But right now, I'm just not too sure that it's going to be up yet. And I'm actually going to adjust this a little closer here. This was from the monthly. So that said, on the daily here, we have this potential where we have clearly a bearish trend, in which appears to be increasing. Still not very strong, just above the 20. We're about 30 on the negative directional index as well. That said, we are bearish, and the trend is bearish for at least through this indication for the time being. Again, on the RSI, still pretty bearish here as well. And so where we can go lower, we'll get to that in a second. Want to look at the 4-hour chart. The 4-hour chart, we had this movement here today. Okay, and this is, kind of what I was looking for and wanted to wait for. This move up here, doesn't appear to me that this is going to be a continued move. And I say that for a couple reasons. I'm kind of going to hone in on the 4-hour chart and focus on this, briefly, because I think it's important. So right here we have some confluence in the indicators, right? Well, okay, first of all, this is what I was talking about, where price action, you'll see it move in this region down here, and it just continues to make lower lows. Okay, at some point in time, generally what I've observed is that you'll see some divergence form. Okay, and then you'll see confluence after it. Okay, so this is this kind of M-shaped pattern I see a lot. Okay, that's kind of a bad M, but where you see you making lower low, lower low, lower low. Okay, however, on the RSI, we're making a higher low, a bit of a higher low, and another bit of a higher low, and then finally we break out here, it pops out. Okay, and we get some confluence. And so we did see that, and that indicates that we may have found bottom. However, whether or not we continue to go from here, we're obviously hitting this area of support that we've labeled roughly at about 40,000. Okay, and you could just look at this as your kind of horizontal line of resistance, not support. I apologize, resistance. And so, but what I've noticed, and again, in the same way that we've looked for this divergence here to kind of confirm that we're done going down, I don't know that we're done making lows here and maybe potentially making higher highs. So the trend I don't think has completely reversed here. We may not make lower lows here, dip really down far, but what we have is this divergence here, okay, where we are now making a kind of hidden bearish divergence, okay, which indicates the continuation of a trend downward. All right, and so where did it go? Get rid of that. So right here and right here, okay. And what we're seeing here on the 4-hour chart is that it's roughly in this 48 to 52, 55 probably range that we were potentially getting rejected, okay. And so we have not moved into 50 plus region, which I would consider to be more bullish. And we appear to be at the moment pushing back down, and our directional index appears to show us that we are still currently bearish. Okay, a lot of volume could come in, push this up, blow through some shorts, and then we could see this cross in a moment's notice. However, just given my analysis, as I see it right now, at least on the 4-hour chart. So maybe for the next day or two until we see some movement, we could consolidate here a little bit, but this may push back down. So if it does, some of the areas that I'm going to want to look at, and we're going to go back to the daily. All right. So before we got this kind of correction, we started making lower lows. We had this guy up here. Okay, right here to here to here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a trend-based fib extension, okay, to kind of measure this trend and potentially the extension down in this trend. And what we see is that and we can move this back to the 4-hour to really show how well these levels have been respected. And I'll actually blow this chart up. And you can see, again, this was from this high, this low here, which is kind of like off there. And then this high over here, and it looks like this guy's a little bit higher. And so this is the trend: high, low, lower, high, and now we're on this downward trend. So you can see that price, as it's moved down, has respected the 236, the 382, 50%, 618, your 786, 100% retracement, and actually all the way down to the 200% retracement mark. Okay, so that's a pretty substantial move. From this point to this point, right? And these levels you can see have really shown to be very well observed and very well respected on the way down. So from my point of view, I think these levels are very likely to be respected on the way up. And what we've seen as we moved up here and we started to make this divergence that I've talked about a little bit earlier, that we're hitting this 40,000 range, and it corresponds with that 1272 area that we hit before. So if we move back down and we see a pullback here again, levels that we could potentially expect to see, hit again, right, would be this 1618, right, and then the two down here at the 31,000. Okay, we can also do, because what I'm measuring is this divergence low until we broke out here. So the last highest high before we moved back down and it came up. And so I can actually hide this guy right here and say, let's measure, take it in a little closer and measure here, here to here, assuming that we have reached top and we're going to continue moving our path down, okay? So now we're looking at a little more, tighter levels, and maybe a 289 to a 264 down here, and then 1618 would be 23666-ish right in there, assuming that this trend holds. And if we wanted to pull it to this guy here even, okay, and we were to measure that down, a 272, the 1618 is about 28,000, and then the 272 down here 24 or 25. Okay, so I mentioned those regions specifically because if we do get another kind of sell-off here for whatever reason, whether Elon sneezes and it sounds like no more Bitcoin, or some sort of policies in government or whatever it is that could potentially push us lower, what we need to look at is what I'd like to look at again. We're going to pull it back up to the weekly, and I want to measure this retracement from our previous high, to our low in this kind of bear market here, right? And I realize this whole area, but from this dump from our previous high, after we had, all this market cycle back down to here and up. And what we're seeing here is that we hit this 1618 region, okay, and it was rejected, clearly, right? Moved back down, we've hit this 1272 region, okay, and we found some support just a little bit higher than that there, okay? And then now we appear to be moving up. However, we have this 1414 region where we could potentially find resistance and move back down again, okay? Now, where we can go from there is we see this very clear 100% retracement where we've found this area of accumulation here, which also corresponds clearly with the previous high. But if we take it in a little bit closer here on the daily, we can see that we have this little area as well where we can mark as an area of support. All but weak, it is an area of support here at 24, whatever, 25-ish, roughly. A nice psychological support. So if we go back over here, and we're going to get rid of that guy and pull this one and this one, we see this fib clustering off of these two trends, which is this high, low, high, and then this guy down here. And I actually want to pull this back up, right? So we see a little bit of fib clustering right here at this 28, right? Like I had mentioned, all right? And we see that that corresponds with this previous low over here. So we're just going to go ahead and mark that. And then we see a little bit of clustering down here at this 25, okay? A little bit higher, but than we had marked before. But we're going to put it right in here. I'm going to put it right in the middle of those two clusters, right, where the two Fibonacci lines are lining up. And then we have this area of clustering right here, okay? So I'm going to mark all of these on the chart just because they potentially will be valuable. And then one more where we have a really nice overlay of the two right here. And I'm going to pull that all the way back here and put it right there. So this area, this area, this area, this area, and this area are where we're seeing, well, maybe not this one. This was from the one before, where we're seeing clustering of the Fibonacci levels, meaning they're pretty close together, and meaning that these areas could potentially be significant. So I'm going to get rid of those. And so now we see, where if we move down, okay, if we move to the low side here and we continue to kind of pull back, and I'm going to actually pull this first one up from this higher trend, areas where we're looking for support, and we really need to find them there, short of us breaking lower, coming down here. If 2.5 breaks, right, if we see a break of 25,000, specifically a little bit lower here at 24.1, right in that region, then I think 20,000 is the next best contender. If we, I'll release some sort of analysis well before then if we start moving down in this region, okay? But for now, this is kind of where we're looking for areas of support as we move up. And you'll see this pattern likely through most of even the alts, this kind of movement, short of maybe some Matic or these other things pulling up. But with this drop, if we drop more, you're going to see this kind of pattern here, same like we saw in COVID, with this big nasty drop just across the board, just due to the systemic relationship that the alts have with, this is still the majority of the market cap right here. Okay, so as this is why I specifically watch Bitcoin. I just look at Bitstamp just because it has the most data. But so if we do move down here, we don't find support here at 37, 38. Look for support here at 35. I do have buys laddered down to these different areas just in case, I'm sleeping soundly and we have a nice flash crash, and they will all fill, hopefully, in theory, on the way down. I challenge you guys to, get in there, look at the charts, figure out good areas where you could potentially put in some buys yourself. But this is my analysis for now. Again, kind of on the bearish side on the daily. 4 hour, potentially looking like we can see another push low. And we have identified these areas on this daily chart. And I'll just kind of end it on this, get rid of this, and leave this here in case anybody wants to pause the video, take a look at what these may be and how this corresponds and may agree with your own technical analysis. All right, guys, thanks for listening, and we will talk to you soon.